You know, for 2.5 millennia, one name has just stood out as the ultimate symbol of power, ambition, and pure conquest. And that name, of course, is Alexander the Great. This was a guy who, in a ridiculously short life, completely redrew the map of the ancient world as we know it.
So the big question is, how? I mean, how did a 20-year-old king from this, relatively small kingdom go on to create one of the biggest empires in history? We're talking from Greece all the way to India. Think about it. This was an age with no internet, no GPS, just really slow communication and sorta okay maps. What was driving this guy? Well, that's what we're going to dig into. Let's try to uncover what made him tick.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. Alexander's story kicks off way back in 356 BC. Now, he was born the son of a king, King Philip II of Macedon, so yeah, he was born into privilege. But his father made sure he wasn't just another spoiled royal. No, he was going to be shaped by the absolute greatest minds of the time.
And get this, when Alexander was just 13, his dad made a pretty wild move. He hired the greatest thinker of the era to be his son's private tutor. We're talking about the one and only Aristotle. This wasn't just about learning your ABCs, this was about forging a king from the ground up. So what was on the syllabus for a future world conqueror? Well, Aristotle's curriculum was tailor-made for a ruler. He taught Alexander religion, art, logic, and philosophy. But these weren't just abstract ideas, nope. They were practical tools. This education, right here, in strategic thinking and reason, this would become the foundation for everything he was about to do. And you could see his potential from a super young age. There's this famous story, right, about a wild horse, Bucephalus, that nobody could tame. And then comes young Alexander, and he's the only one who can do it. His dad, King Philip, was just blown away. He looked at his son and said those famous words, basically telling him, Macedonia isn't going to be big enough for you. And you know what? That very horse, Bucephalus, would carry him into countless battles to prove his father right.
But his rise to power wasn't exactly peaceful. It was paved with blood. In 336 BC, his father is assassinated, and suddenly a 20-year-old Alexander is on the throne. And he did not hesitate for a second. First thing he does, he executes every single potential rival to secure his rule. And then, when some Greek cities like Thebes thought, hey, a young king, he must be weak. Well, Alexander made a terrifying example of them. He burned the entire city of Thebes to the ground.
Okay, so with Greece now firmly under his control, Alexander looked east, and he set his sights on a much, much bigger prize, the colossal Persian Empire. He left a general in charge back home, and with 40,000 soldiers, he marched off to what he believed was his destiny. His first big test came almost immediately at the Granicus River. Now, the Persians had the perfect defensive position, up on the high ground across the river. Classic military advantage. But Alexander? He didn't care. He showed his genius right away. He led his cavalry in this wedge-shaped assault. It's exactly what it sounds like, a pointed formation made to just punch through enemy lines, and he charged straight through the river and just shattered the Persian defense. And the result? It was absolutely staggering. The Persians lost thousands of men. Alexander's army? They lost about 50. Just 50. I mean, can you imagine? That victory was so complete it sent a shockwave through the entire Persian Empire. They knew they were in trouble.
But you see, Alexander's legend wasn't just built on the battlefield. As he was making his way through the city of Gordium, he came across a completely different kind of challenge, one that tested his mind, not his muscle, the legendary Gordian knot.
Now, this wasn't just some sailor's knot. This thing was a test of destiny. It was this insanely complicated tangle of rope on an old chariot, and the prophecy was simple. Whoever could untie this impossible knot would become the ruler of all of Asia. Big prize, right? So what did Alexander do? Did he sit there for hours trying to figure it out? Nope. He just looked at it, redefined the problem, and drew his sword and sliced the whole thing in half. That one moment tells you everything you need to know about how this guy thought. Direct, bold, and totally unwilling to play by the normal rules. And with that kind of momentum, his conquest just exploded across the east. First, at Issus, he completely routs the Persian king Darius, who literally runs away from the battle. Then, he gets to the island fortress of Tyre and does the impossible. He builds a bridge, a causeway through the sea to conquer it. After that, he rolls into Egypt and they welcome him as a liberator, a god. And finally, at the Battle of Gaugamela, he smashes what's left of Darius's army for good. The Persian Empire was his. So, the Persian Empire's gone. Mission accomplished, right?
Not for Alexander. For him, this wasn't the end of the road. His ambition was just limitless. It pushed him even further east, beyond the edges of the known world, into the vast, mysterious lands of India.
And it's here in Punjab that he faced maybe his toughest opponent ever. On the banks of the Hydaspes River, he went up against King Porus, a brilliant commander whose army had a secret weapon, terrifying war elephants. The battle that went down was one of the most brutal fights of Alexander's entire life.
Now, Alexander did win in the end, but he was so blown away by how bravely King Porus fought that he did something you just wouldn't expect. Instead of killing him or throwing him in a dungeon, he offered to let Porus keep ruling his own kingdom, but as an ally. It really shows you there was more to Alexander than just conquest. He had this deep respect for a worthy opponent.
So at this point, Alexander had conquered more of the world than anyone in history. But right there in India, his unstoppable ambition finally ran into an immovable object: his own soldiers. See, Alexander wanted to keep going, maybe all the way to the edge of the world. But his army? They were just done. After years and years of non-stop fighting, thousands of miles from home, they started asking themselves, okay, we conquered everything. Now what? They'd had enough.
Finally, one of his generals had to lay it out for him. He said the men were just homesick. They missed their families, their kids, their homes, and for the first time, Alexander was facing a mutiny. The guy who couldn't be conquered had to make a choice. And so, for the first time in his life, he turned back.
So Alexander heads back to Babylon, which is now the capital of his huge new empire. He's not just sitting around, though. He immediately starts planning his next big thing, a campaign into Arabia. But he would never get the chance. It all happened so fast. In June of 323 BC, after a night of heavy drinking, Alexander gets hit with this sudden, really high fever. And for the next 12 days, he just gets worse and worse. I mean, think about it. The most powerful man on the planet was completely helpless. His doctors tried everything, but nothing worked. And just like that, he died, leaving his entire empire completely stunned. And how old was he when he died? 32. Just 32 years old. He'd basically conquered the known world in a little over 10 years. And he did it all before he even turned 33. It's just unbelievable.
So, what do we make of him? What's his real legacy? On the one hand, he was a student of philosophy who spread Greek culture and ideas across the world. But on the other hand, he was a ruthless general responsible for the deaths of thousands. Was he a visionary who connected East and West, or a tyrant who just wanted power? Maybe the real answer is that he was both. And it's that contradiction, that impossible mix, that makes his story still so fascinating even after all this time.